She's my real partner now. You're just here for appearances." The words hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. I stood there in the middle of the company Christmas party, champagne glass in hand, watching my husband Bradley wrap his arm around his secretary's waist. The room erupted in laughter. Not polite, uncomfortable chuckles, actual laughter. These people I'd smiled at for years, whose names I knew, whose kids I'd asked about, were laughing at me. My name is Melissa. I'm 42 years old, and until 3 minutes ago, I thought I was attending a festive holiday party in Nashville with my husband of 15 years. I thought I was dressed appropriately in my emerald cocktail dress. I thought I belonged here. I was wrong about all of it. Bradley had walked out of the bathroom with Vanessa, his 28-year-old secretary with the perfect highlights and the practiced laugh, and made his announcement like he was unveiling a new product line. His colleagues from Northries Apparel, the mid-sized clothing manufacturing company he'd built with my money, stood around holding drinks and nodding like this was the most reasonable thing in the world. "Finally being honest, Bradley," someone called out. A man named Gerald, I think, VP of Operations. We all knew anyway. More laughter. Vanessa tucked herself closer to Bradley's side, her red dress shimmering under the restaurant's dim lighting. She didn't even have the decency to look uncomfortable. She looked triumphant. I took a sip of my champagne. The bubbles fizzed against my tongue, flat and bitter. Then I set the glass down on the nearest table, picked up my clutch and walked toward the exit. My heels clicked against the hardwood floor. Nobody tried to stop me. Nobody said a word. The cold December air hit my face as I pushed through the restaurant doors. The streets of Nashville glittered with Christmas lights, families walking past with shopping bags and laughter. I stood there for a moment, breath forming clouds in front of me, and let myself feel it. The humiliation, the betrayal, the rage. Then I pulled out my phone and made a call. "Lawrence, it's Melissa. Yes, I know what time it is. I need you to execute Phase 2 immediately." Lawrence Kittredge was my attorney. He was also the only person who knew what I'd been planning for the past 8 months. Because here's what Bradley didn't know about his wife. Here's what none of them knew. 15 years ago, I'd invested $200,000 of my inheritance into Bradley's startup dream. I'd worked alongside him in those early years, handling the books, managing vendors, designing half the initial product line. When the company started growing, I'd stepped back. Not because he asked me to, but because I wanted to focus on other investments. I'd built a quiet portfolio over the years, stocks, bonds, a few real estate properties. Nothing flashy, nothing Bradley paid attention to. 3 years ago, I started noticing things. Late nights that smelled like perfume. Texts that got deleted. A distance between us that felt like ice. I'd asked him directly if something was wrong. He'd laughed and called me paranoid. He'd made me feel crazy for even asking. So I'd stopped asking. I'd started investigating instead. Vanessa had started working at Northries Apparel 2 years ago. The affair had begun within 6 months. I'd known for a year and a half. I'd watched them together at company events, seen the way his hand lingered on her lower back, noticed how he laughed at her jokes like she was the most clever person alive. And I'd made a plan. Bradley had always been sloppy with finances. He loved the creative side of the business, the design and marketing. The boring details of ownership and equity bored him. When various investors had approached him over the past year offering to buy shares, he'd barely glanced at the paperwork before signing. He'd been too busy with Vanessa to notice the pattern. Those investors were mine. Shell companies, trusts, proxies. Lawrence had helped me structure everything perfectly legally. Every share Bradley sold, thinking he was diversifying and bringing in outside capital, had actually been coming back to me. I'd been patient, methodical, watching and waiting for the right moment. Apparently, the right moment was a Christmas party where my husband decided to humiliate me in front of 50 people. Phase 2 is already in motion, Lawrence said on the phone, his voice steady. The board meeting is scheduled for Monday morning at 9. All proxies are confirmed. You'll have your 51% control documented and verified by Sunday evening. Perfect, I said, watching a couple walk past, holding hands, shopping bags swinging between them. And the divorce papers? Ready for your signature. I can have them delivered to the office Monday morning if you'd like to make it official during the meeting. I smiled for the first time all evening. That would be perfect, Lawrence. Thank you. Merry Christmas, Melissa. Merry Christmas. I hung up and stood there for another moment, letting the cold air clear my head. Then I walked to my car, drove home to our empty house in the suburbs, and started packing. I had 3 days before Monday's board meeting. 3 days before Bradley's world came crashing down. I intended to enjoy every single minute of them. The house felt different that night. I walked through rooms we'd decorated together, past furniture we'd picked out, photographs of trips we'd taken. 15 years of marriage documented on walls and shelves. It should have made me sad. Instead, I felt nothing. That scared me more than the anger. I'd loved Bradley once. Really loved him. I'd believed in his dreams, supported his ambitions, celebrated his victories. When had that love curdled into this hollow feeling? When had I become someone who could walk past our wedding photo without even blinking? I poured myself a glass of wine, better wine than that cheap champagne at the party, and sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop. I had work to do. My background wasn't in fashion, it was in finance. I'd worked as an analyst at Cinderglow Textiles for 6 years before meeting Bradley, climbing from entry-level to senior analyst before I turned 30. I'd understood numbers, patterns, market trends. That's what had attracted Bradley to me initially, I think. I'd helped him see his little startup clothing company not as a dream, but as a viable business. I'd walked away from Cinderglow when Northrise started taking off. Bradley had needed help, and I'd wanted to support him. Looking back now, I wondered if that had been my first mistake. Giving up my career, my independence, my identity outside of being Bradley's wife. But that investment had never really gone away. I'd just redirected it. I opened my private files, the ones Bradley knew nothing about, and reviewed my portfolio. The real estate properties in Memphis and Louisville were performing well. The stock investments were solid. And then there was Northrise Apparel, my husband's company, where I now owned 51% of shares through carefully structured proxies. The beauty of it was the timing. Bradley had been so focused on Vanessa, so distracted by the affair, that he'd missed every warning sign. When I'd suggested he consider bringing in outside investors last year, he jumped at the idea. More capital meant expansion, new product lines, a bigger office. He'd seen dollar signs. He hadn't seen me quietly buying up those shares through intermediaries. Lawrence had been essential. He'd connected me with the right people, structured the shell companies properly, made sure every transaction was completely legal and documented. Bradley had signed the sales agreements himself, excited about the influx of cash and new partnerships. He'd literally sold me control of his own company without realizing it. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Jennifer, who lived in Portland and knew everything about the situation. "Are you okay? Do you need me to fly out?" I typed back, "I'm fine. Everything's going according to plan. Talk Monday after the meeting." "Proud of you," she replied immediately. "Bradley's going to regret this." I set the phone down and walked upstairs to our bedroom. The bed was made perfectly. I'd always been the one who made it. Bradley's clothes were scattered across the chair in the corner. His cologne bottles lined the dresser. Signs of a man who'd grown comfortable, entitled, certain that his life would continue exactly as it had been. I pulled out my suitcase and started packing. Not everything, just enough for a week. I'd stay at a hotel until Monday, somewhere nice where I could think clearly and prepare for the confrontation. The house could wait. The divorce settlement could wait. First came the board meeting. First came watching Bradley's face when he realized what I'd done. My phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but something made me answer. "Melissa?" A woman's voice, tentative and uncertain. "Yes?" "This is Patricia. Patricia Hayes. I work in accounting at Northrise. I remembered her. Quiet woman in her 50s, always polite at company events. Hi, Patricia. Is everything okay? There was a long pause. I heard about what happened tonight, at the party. My hand tightened on the phone. Word travels fast. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. What Bradley did was horrible, and I wanted you to know that not everyone thinks it's okay. Something cracked in my chest, the first real emotion I'd felt since leaving that restaurant. Thank you, Patricia. That means a lot. There's something else. Her voice dropped lower. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but Bradley's been moving money around. Large transfers to personal accounts. I flagged it to him last week and he told me it was none of my concern. But Melissa, I think he's planning something. I think he might be trying to take money out of the company. I sat down on the edge of the bed. How much money? Close to $200,000 over the past 3 months. Small enough transfers that it wouldn't trigger immediate alarm, but I noticed the pattern. $200,000. The exact amount of my initial investment. Thank you for telling me, Patricia. I have documentation, if you need it. Copies of the transfer records. Email them to me at my personal address. Do you have it? I do. I'll send them tonight. She hesitated. I hope Monday goes the way you want it to, Melissa. Whatever you're planning. How do you know I'm planning something? Patricia laughed softly. Because you're smarter than he ever gave you credit for. We all saw it, those of us who paid attention. Good luck. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding the phone, staring at Bradley's scattered clothes, his comfortable mess, his entitled existence. He'd been stealing from his own company, planning his exit strategy probably, getting ready to leave me with nothing while he rode off into the sunset with Vanessa. He'd underestimated me. They all had. I finished packing, called a hotel, and booked a suite for the weekend. Then I opened my laptop and waited for Patricia's email. The game had just gotten more interesting. Saturday morning arrived with pale winter sunlight streaming through the hotel room windows. I'd barely slept, but I didn't feel tired. I felt electric, alive, focused in a way I hadn't felt in years. Patricia's email had come through at midnight. Attached were detailed records of every suspicious transfer Bradley had made over the past 3 months. Money moving from Northrise Apparel's operating accounts into personal accounts, then shuffling between various banks. He'd been careful, but not careful enough. Patricia had tracked every transaction. I forwarded everything to Lawrence with a note. Add this to Monday's presentation. My phone rang at 8 in the morning. Bradley. I stared at his name on the screen, watched it ring 4 times, then sent it to voicemail. He called back immediately. I ignored it again. A text followed. Where are you? We need to talk. I didn't respond. Another text. Melissa, this is ridiculous. Come home so we can discuss this like adults. I almost laughed. Adults. The man who'd humiliated me in front of his entire company, who'd been stealing money and sleeping with his secretary, wanted to discuss things like adults. I spent Saturday reviewing documents. Lawrence sent over the complete ownership structure, every proxy vote confirmed, every share accounted for. I had 51% control of Northrise Apparel. Bradley owned 32%. The remaining 17% was split between 3 minor investors, who'd already agreed to vote with me on any major decisions. Bradley didn't know it yet, but he'd lost his company. Sunday morning brought more calls from Bradley. More texts. They progressed from demanding to angry to almost pleading. I ignored all of them. Let him wonder. Let him worry. Let him spend the weekend the way I'd spent the past 1.5 years, uncertain, anxious, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Jennifer called Sunday afternoon. How are you holding up? Surprisingly well, actually. I was sitting in the hotel restaurant, eating lunch alone, watching families enjoy their weekend. I think I'm angrier about the laughter than the affair. What do you mean? At the party, When Bradley announced Vanessa was his real partner, everyone laughed. His colleagues, people I've known for years, they just laughed like I was the punchline to some joke. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. That says more about them than it does about you. I know, but it still hurt. Well, tomorrow you get to show them exactly who the joke was on. How does that feel? I smiled. Honestly, it feels amazing. We talked for another hour. Jennifer had always been my closest confidant, the only person who'd known about the affair before I was ready to deal with it. She'd supported every decision, never once suggesting I was being vindictive or petty. She understood that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming something that had been stolen from me. My dignity, my respect, my sense of self-worth. Sunday evening, Lawrence called with final confirmations. Everything's set for tomorrow morning. Board meeting starts at 9. All proxy holders will be present. I've prepared a complete presentation detailing your stake and the questionable financial transfers Bradley's been making. Will he know I'm coming? I notified him there would be an emergency board meeting to address ownership and financial concerns. He thinks it's about potential investors withdrawing. He has no idea you'll be in that room. Perfect. Melissa, are you sure about the divorce papers? We could wait until after the board meeting. Handle things more privately. I thought about Friday night. The restaurant full of people laughing at me. Vanessa's triumphant smile. Bradley's casual cruelty, like I was nothing more than an inconvenience he could finally discard. I'm sure. I want him to understand exactly what he's lost, all at once. The company and the marriage, both gone in the same moment. Lawrence sighed, but it sounded approving. You're going to devastate him. Good. He deserves it. That night, I laid out my outfit for the morning. A navy suit, perfectly tailored. Pearl earrings Bradley had given me for our 10th anniversary. Heels that made me 3 inches taller. I wanted to walk into that boardroom looking powerful, collected, untouchable. I wanted them to see exactly what they'd underestimated. Around 10 p.m., Bradley called one more time. This time, I answered. Melissa, finally, where the hell have you been? A hotel. Downtown. Silence. Then carefully. Why would you stay at a hotel? Because I don't want to be in the same house as you, Bradley. Look, about Friday night, I think you might have misunderstood. I misunderstood nothing. You brought your mistress to a company party and announced she was your real partner. You humiliated me in front of 50 people. There's nothing to misunderstand. Vanessa isn't my mistress. It's complicated. No, it's actually very simple. You've been having an affair for over a year. You've been stealing money from your own company, and tomorrow you're going to face the consequences of both. Another long silence. When he spoke again, his voice was different, harder. What are you talking about? What consequences? You'll find out tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., emergency board meeting. You were notified. Melissa, what did you do? I protected myself, Bradley. That's all. I protected myself from a man who clearly had no intention of protecting me. You're being dramatic. Whatever you think you've figured out. I own 51% of Northrise Apparel, through legal proxies and shell companies, all purchased with my own money. You sold me control of your company without even realizing it. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. That's impossible, he finally said. Those were outside investors. Those were me. All of them. Every share you sold over the past 8 months came back to me. And tomorrow morning, I'm taking over the company you built with my money, my investment, and my trust. The company you destroyed while sleeping with your secretary. Melissa, wait. Let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. See you at 9, Bradley. Don't be late. I hung up before he could respond. Then I turned off my phone, closed my eyes, and let myself feel the satisfaction of knowing that tomorrow, everything changed. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. I woke at 6, showered, dressed with careful precision. Every detail mattered today. The navy suit fit perfectly, professional and authoritative. The pearls caught the light. My hair was pulled back in a sleek bun. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. I arrived at the Northrise Apparel offices at 8:30. The building was a 3-story structure in a business park outside Nashville, modern glass and steel that Bradley had been so proud of when we moved here 5 years ago. I'd helped pick out the furniture for the lobby. I'd chosen the artwork in the conference rooms. My hands on this building ran deeper than anyone knew. Lawrence was waiting in the parking lot, briefcase in hand. "You look ready." "I am." "Bradley called me 6 times last night after you hung up on him. He's panicking." "Good." We walked through the lobby together. The receptionist, a young woman named Kelly, looked up in surprise. Melissa, I didn't know you'd be here today." "Emergency board meeting," I said pleasantly. "Is the conference room ready?" "Yes, everyone's gathering now." Kelly's eyes were wide, curious. Word had clearly spread about Friday night. I wondered what version of the story she'd heard. The conference room was on the 2nd floor, a large space with windows overlooking the parking lot. When I walked in, conversation stopped. 8 people were already seated around the table. Bradley stood at the head, his face pale. Vanessa sat 2 chairs down from him, which was bold, considering she had no official reason to be in a board meeting. Gerald, the VP of operations who'd made that comment Friday night, actually had the grace to look uncomfortable when he saw me. "Melissa," Bradley said, his voice tight. "What are you doing here?" "I'm a major shareholder. I have every right to be here." I took a seat directly across from him. Lawrence sat beside me, already pulling documents from his briefcase. "This meeting is about company ownership structure," Bradley said, looking around the table like someone might back him up. "It doesn't concern." "Actually," Lawrence interrupted smoothly, "this meeting concerns ownership very much. Which is exactly why Mrs. Melissa needs to be present." I watched Bradley's jaw clench. He knew something was wrong, but he didn't know what yet. He couldn't quite figure out how to regain control of the situation. The remaining board members filtered in over the next 10 minutes. Patricia from accounting gave me a small nod as she took her seat. 2 of the minor investors I'd been working with, men named Thomas and Bernard, sat on my side of the table. The 3rd investor, a woman named Judith who owned a textile company in Memphis, positioned herself carefully neutral in the middle. At precisely 9 a.m., Lawrence stood. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. We've called this meeting to address serious concerns about company ownership and financial management. I think we should begin with clarifying the current ownership structure." He clicked a button on his laptop. The screen at the front of the room lit up with a pie chart showing share distribution. As of this morning, ownership of Northrise Apparel breaks down as follows. Melissa holds 51% through various legal trusts and proxy arrangements. Bradley holds 32%. The remaining 17% is distributed among Thomas, Bernard, and Judith. The room went silent. Bradley stared at the screen like it was showing something in a foreign language. "That's wrong," he said finally. "That can't be right. I own 49%. We've had outside investors, yes, but I maintained majority control." "You sold that control," Lawrence said calmly. "Over the past 8 months, you sold shares to various investors. Those investors were shell companies and trusts controlled by Melissa. Every transaction was legal, documented, and signed by you personally." He pulled up another slide showing the transaction history. Date after date, Bradley's signature on sales agreements, transferring shares, accepting payment. Vanessa made a small sound. Bradley's face had gone from pale to gray. "This is fraud," he said, his voice rising. "You can't just... You used shell companies. That's deceptive." "It's completely legal," Lawrence said. You sold shares to investors who wanted to remain anonymous. That's common practice. You conducted due diligence on each sale. Or at least you should have. You signed the agreements willingly. The money was transferred properly. There was no deception, just investment strategy. Gerald leaned back in his chair, processing. So, Melissa owns the company now. Melissa owns controlling interest, Lawrence confirmed. Which means any major decisions about company direction, leadership, financial management, all of that requires her approval. I watched Bradley's hands curl into fists on the table. Vanessa had shrunk in her seat, like she wanted to disappear. There's more, Lawrence continued. He pulled up another slide, this one showing transfer records. Over the past 3 months, approximately $200,000 has been moved from company operating accounts into personal accounts controlled by Bradley. These transfers weren't authorized by the board and weren't properly documented as salary or dividends. Patricia was nodding. She'd provided these records. Thomas and Bernard were frowning, looking at Bradley with new suspicion. That's my money, Bradley said quickly. My salary, my bonuses. Your salary is $60,000 annually, Lawrence said. Your bonuses are determined quarterly by board vote and typically average another $40,000 per year. $200,000 in 3 months is neither salary nor approved bonuses. It's embezzlement. The word hung in the air like a blade. I built this company, Bradley said, standing up now, his voice desperate. I started it from nothing. That money is mine. You built it with Melissa's initial investment of $200,000, Lawrence said calmly. The exact amount you've now stolen from company accounts. Interesting coincidence. I stood then, smoothing my suit jacket. Every eye in the room turned to me. Bradley, I said quietly. You wanted Vanessa to be your real partner. You made that very clear Friday night in front of everyone. So let me make something equally clear now. I reached into my bag and pulled out a manila envelope. Lawrence handed me a pen. These are divorce papers. I'm filing for divorce effective immediately. The grounds are adultery, which should be easy enough to prove, given your very public announcement. I signed the papers with deliberate strokes, then slid them across the table to Bradley. And as majority shareholder of Northrise Apparel, I'm exercising my right to remove you as CEO effective immediately. The board will vote, but with my 51% and the support of Thomas and Bernard. Both men nodded. The outcome is certain. Bradley stared at the divorce papers like they might burst into flames. Vanessa stood abruptly. This is insane. Bradley, don't let her. Vanessa, I said, turning to look at her directly for the first time. You're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Her mouth fell open. You can't fire me. You don't work here. I own 51% of this company. I can absolutely fire you, and I am. I picked up the phone on the conference table and called security myself. The next 10 minutes were chaos. Vanessa refused to leave, insisting Bradley would protect her. Bradley sat frozen at the table, staring at the divorce papers with the expression of a man watching his life collapse in real time. Security arrived, 2 men who'd worked for the company for years, and they looked uncertainly between me and Bradley. She owns the company now, Thomas said helpfully. Majority shareholder, her orders stand. Vanessa turned to Bradley, her voice rising to something close to a shriek. Do something. Tell them this is illegal. But Bradley wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me, and I saw something flicker across his face. Understanding, maybe, of just how thoroughly he'd been outmaneuvered. How completely I'd dismantled everything while he'd been too busy with his affair to notice. Bradley? Vanessa's voice cracked. Just go, he said finally quietly. Pack your desk. Go home. You're just going to let her... I said go. The shout made everyone in the room flinch. Vanessa's face crumpled, tears starting to stream down her carefully made-up face, mascara already running. Security gently took her arms and led her toward the door. She turned back once, looking at Bradley with betrayal in her eyes, and I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered Friday night, her triumphant smile, the way she'd pressed against Bradley's side while 50 people laughed at me. The sympathy evaporated. After she was gone, the conference room remained tense and silent. Gerald cleared his throat. So what happens now? I sat back down, composed. Now we vote on new leadership. I'm proposing Patricia takes over as interim CEO while we search for a permanent replacement. She's been with the company for 8 years, knows the finances inside and out, and has consistently demonstrated sound judgment. Patricia looked shocked. Me? Melissa, I'm an accountant. You're smart, honest, and you understand this company's operations better than anyone. Will you do it? She glanced at Bradley, who was still staring at the divorce papers on the table. Then she looked back at me and nodded. Yes, I'll do it. All in favor? My hand went up. Thomas and Bernard followed immediately. Judith hesitated only a second before raising hers. Gerald and the other 2 board members who'd been close to Bradley looked uncomfortable but eventually followed suit. Bradley didn't vote. He didn't move at all. Motion passes, Lawrence said, making notes. Patricia is interim CEO effective immediately. What about Bradley? Gerald asked. Does he stay on in some capacity? I looked at my soon-to-be ex-husband. 15 years of marriage, and it ended like this. Him sitting in a conference room he'd picked out, in a building he'd been so proud of, everything he'd built crumbling around him. Bradley can remain as a consultant if he'd like, I said. A title without real authority, minimal salary, no decision-making power. Or he can resign completely and will buy out his remaining shares at fair market value. You can't do this, Bradley said finally, his voice rough. You can't just take my company. I didn't take it. You sold it to me, piece by piece, over 8 months, because you were too distracted by your affair to pay attention to what you were signing. I built this from nothing. You built it with my money. My voice rose for the first time, the anger I'd been holding back finally breaking through. $200,000 of my inheritance, Bradley. Money my grandmother left me. Money I gave you because I believed in you, because I loved you, because I thought we were partners. We were partners. No, we were never partners. I was your bank account, your safety net, your convenient wife who handled the boring details while you played creative genius. And when you got bored with me, you replaced me with someone younger and prettier, and made sure everyone knew I was disposable. The room was absolutely silent now. Gerald wouldn't meet my eyes. The other board members looked deeply uncomfortable. Bradley's face had gone red. If you'd paid more attention, if you'd been more involved. I was involved. I designed half your original product line. I managed your vendors for 3 years. I built the financial systems that let this company grow. And then you told me my input wasn't needed anymore, that you had professional designers now, that I should focus on the home and let you handle business. So I did. I stepped back. I trusted you. I stood again, my hands flat on the table, leaning forward. And while I was trusting you, you were sleeping with your secretary, stealing money from your own company, planning to leave me with nothing. So forgive me, Bradley, if I don't feel guilty about protecting myself. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. The divorce papers are there, I said, pointing at the manila envelope. Sign them or don't. Either way, I'm moving forward. You have 1 week to decide if you want to stay on as a consultant or sell your shares and leave completely. Lawrence will handle the details. I picked up my bag and walked toward the door. Lawrence gathered his materials and followed. Just as I reached the doorway, Bradley's voice stopped me. I never meant to hurt you. I turned back. He looked smaller somehow, diminished in his chair at the head of a table where he no longer had any power. Yes, you did, I said quietly. Maybe not at first. Maybe it started out as just an affair, just a mistake. But Friday night, when you brought her to that party and announced she was your real partner, when you let everyone laugh at me, that was intentional. That was cruel. You wanted me to know exactly how little I mattered to you. Melissa. And now you know exactly how little you matter to me. We're even. I walked out before he could respond. Lawrence caught up with me in the hallway. That was intense. That was necessary. My hands were shaking slightly. I pressed them against my thighs, willing them to steady. You okay? I will be. I took a deep breath. What happens next? Legally? Bradley has to respond to the divorce petition within 30 days. Given the circumstances, the adultery, the public nature of the affair, I expect he'll settle quickly. As for the company, Patricia will take over operations immediately. You'll need to be involved in major decisions as majority shareholder, but day-to-day management can be delegated. And the embezzled money? We can pursue criminal charges if you want, or we can require repayment as part of the divorce settlement. Your choice. I thought about Bradley sitting in that conference room, his world destroyed. Part of me wanted to push further, to make him suffer more. But another part of me just wanted to be done. Let's start with repayment, I said. If he refuses or can't pay, then we'll consider criminal charges. Fair enough? We reached the elevator. As the doors opened, Patricia appeared, hurrying down the hallway. Melissa, wait! I held the elevator door. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Thank you for trusting me with this. I won't let you down. I know you won't. Can I ask you something? Patricia hesitated. Did you really plan all of this? The share purchases, the timing, everything? I smiled. Every single detail. How long? I've known about the affair for 1.5 years. I've been buying shares for 8 months, and I've been waiting for the right moment to act. Patricia shook her head in amazement. He never saw it coming. That was the point. The elevator ride down felt longer than it should have. Lawrence kept glancing at me like he expected me to break down, to show some emotion beyond the cold calculation I'd displayed in the conference room. But I felt oddly calm, focused, like I'd been holding my breath for months and could finally exhale. We stepped out into the lobby. Kelly at the reception desk watched us with wide eyes, clearly dying to know what had happened upstairs, but too professional to ask. The morning sunlight streamed through the glass doors, bright and promising. Then I saw them. A news van in the parking lot. A reporter with a camera crew setting up outside the building. What the hell? Lawrence muttered. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. Did you call the press? Because Channel 7 is reporting a major shakeup at Northrise Apparel. I hadn't called anyone, but someone had. The reporter spotted us through the glass doors and started walking toward the building. Lawrence grabbed my arm. We should go out the back. No. I straightened my shoulders. I have nothing to hide. We pushed through the doors. The reporter, a woman in her 30s with perfect hair and a practiced smile, thrust a microphone toward me. Are you Melissa, the new majority owner of Northrise Apparel? I am. Can you comment on reports that you've removed your husband as CEO and filed for divorce, all in the same board meeting? So that's how the press found out. Someone in that conference room had talked. Gerald, probably, or one of the other board members. Maybe even Vanessa, vindictive in her anger. Yes, that's accurate, I said calmly. I filed for divorce this morning due to my husband's admitted infidelity. As majority shareholder of Northrise Apparel, I also exercised my legal right to restructure company leadership. Patricia Hayes will serve as interim CEO while we search for permanent replacement. There are rumors your husband has been embezzling company funds. That's under investigation and I can't comment further. Now, if you'll excuse me. I walked past her toward my car. The camera followed. Lawrence stayed close, running interference with the reporter's questions. As I reached my car, I heard shouting from the building entrance. Bradley had emerged, Vanessa right behind him, She must have lingered after security escorted her out, waiting for him. The reporter's attention immediately shifted. "Mr. Bradley, can you comment on your removal as CEO? On the divorce filing?" Bradley looked terrible. His hair was disheveled, his tie loose, his face red and furious. "This is a hostile takeover. My wife used illegal means to steal my company." "Actually," Lawrence called out, "every transaction was completely legal. Your signatures are on all the sale agreements. You sold those shares willingly." "I was deceived." "You were careless," I said, surprising myself. I'd been about to leave, but something made me turn back. "You were so busy with your affair that you didn't bother reading what you were signing. That's not deception. That's negligence." The camera swung back to me. I could see the reporter's excitement at the confrontation playing out in her parking lot. "You vindictive—" Bradley started toward me, but Vanessa grabbed his arm. "Bradley, stop. Let's just go." "No, she doesn't get to destroy everything I built." "You destroyed it yourself." The words came out louder than I intended. "You brought your mistress to a company Christmas party and announced she was your real partner. You humiliated me in front of 50 people. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? I made a mistake. You made choices. You chose to have an affair. You chose to steal money from company accounts. You chose to publicly humiliate your wife. Those weren't mistakes, Bradley. Those were decisions. And now you get to live with the results." Vanessa was pulling at his arm now, clearly wanting to leave. The reporter was eating this up, microphone darting between us like she was watching a tennis match. "You'll regret this," Bradley said, his voice low and threatening. "I'll fight you on every front. The divorce, the company shares, all of it. You're not just taking my company. It was never just yours. I invested in it. I worked for it. I believed in it when nobody else did. And you threw that away for a younger woman and a momentary ego boost. So yes, I'm taking control. Yes, I'm protecting what's mine. And if you want to fight me, go ahead. But remember that I have documentation of every share sale, every embezzled dollar, and 50 witnesses to your very public affair announcement." I paused, letting that sink in. "You have nothing but your wounded pride. So by all means, Bradley, fight me. See how that works out." I got in my car before he could respond. Lawrence slipped into the passenger seat. As I started the engine, I could see Bradley standing in the parking lot, Vanessa trying to pull him away, the camera still rolling. "That was incredible," Lawrence said as I pulled out of the parking lot. "Though maybe we should have avoided the press confrontation." "It doesn't matter. The truth is on our side." I glanced in the rearview mirror at Bradley's diminishing figure. He can make all the noise he wants. The facts don't change. My phone started ringing. Jennifer, of course. I put it on speaker. "Holy shit, Melissa. I'm watching this on the news right now. You're trending on social media." "What?" "Someone at that company must have recorded the whole thing and posted it online. The Christmas party humiliation, your takeover today, everything. People are calling you a hero." I didn't know how to feel about that. I hadn't done this for public approval. I'd done it for myself, for the satisfaction of taking back what was mine. But as Lawrence pulled up the trending topics on his phone and showed me the comments, thousands of people supporting me, calling Bradley out for his cruelty, praising my strategy, I felt something shift inside me. Maybe I wasn't alone in this after all. Maybe other people understood what it felt like to be dismissed, belittled, betrayed. Maybe my story mattered beyond just my own revenge. "Melissa?" Jennifer's voice pulled me back. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," I said, and realized I meant it. I'm actually really okay. "Where are you going now?" "I don't know. Home, I guess. The real one. The house can wait." "Good. You deserve to rest. You've had one hell of a morning." "That's an understatement." We hung up. Lawrence directed me toward his office where we'd review next steps for the divorce proceedings and company transition. But my mind was elsewhere, replaying the past few hours. The conference room confrontation. Bradley's face when he realized he'd lost everything. Vanessa's tears. Patricia's gratitude. The reporter's microphone. Bradley's impotent rage in the parking lot. I'd won. Completely, decisively, with no room for doubt. So why did I still feel like something was unfinished? The answer came as we pulled into Lawrence's office parking lot. My phone rang again. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Melissa, this is Judith, from the board. The neutral investor who'd been sitting in the middle. Hi, Judith. What can I do for you? I wanted to talk to you privately about Northrise Apparel, about the future of the company. I think there's something you should know. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. What is it? Not over the phone. Can you meet me? Today? I looked at Lawrence, who was watching me with concern. Where? There's a cafe downtown, Hummingbird Coffee. I can be there in an hour. I'll be there. I hung up and sat there for a moment, processing. Lawrence raised an eyebrow. Another twist? Maybe. Judith wants to meet. She says there's something I need to know about the company. Could be a setup. Bradley might have gotten to her. Or it could be important information I need. I checked the time. Either way, I'm going to find out. Hummingbird Coffee was a small place tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing shop in downtown Nashville. I arrived 15 minutes early, ordered a black coffee, and took a corner table where I could watch the door. Lawrence had wanted to come with me, but I'd insisted on going alone. Whatever Judith wanted to say, she'd be more likely to talk freely without my attorney present. She arrived exactly on time, scanning the cafe until she spotted me. Judith was in her late 50s, sharp-eyed and professional, with silver hair cut in a precise bob. She owned a textile manufacturing company in Memphis and had been one of Bradley's investors for 3 years. Thank you for meeting me, she said, settling into the chair across from me. I wasn't sure you would. You said it was important. It is. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, seeming to gather her thoughts. I need to tell you something about Bradley's plans, something he discussed with me 6 months ago. My stomach tightened. What kind of plans? He approached me about buying you out. Forcing you out, actually. He wanted to know if I'd support a vote to dilute your shares and restructure the company in a way that would leave you with nothing. The cafe noise faded into background static. He wanted to push me out of my own investment. He said you were dead weight, that you hadn't contributed to the company in years and didn't deserve any ownership stake. He wanted to give your share percentage to Vanessa, make her an official partner. Judith's expression was grim. I told him absolutely not, that it was unethical and probably illegal, but he was determined. Did anyone else know about this? He approached Thomas and Bernard, too. They both refused. Gerald, on the other hand. She paused significantly. Gerald was on board. So were 2 of the other board members. Bradley had enough votes lined up to make it happen. So why didn't he? Because you moved faster. You started buying shares through proxies before he could execute his plan. By the time he was ready to make his move, you'd already secured majority control without anyone realizing it. Judith leaned forward. Melissa, do you understand what I'm saying? He wasn't just having an affair. He was actively plotting to strip you of everything you'd invested in his company. I sat back, trying to process this. The affair had hurt. The public humiliation had enraged me. But this was something else entirely. Calculated malice. Planned betrayal. Bradley had looked me in the eye for months while plotting to steal everything from me. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because you need to understand who you're dealing with. Bradley's not going to accept defeat gracefully. He's going to fight, and he's going to fight dirty. Gerald and the others who were in on his plan. They're going to back him up. You need to be prepared. What do you think he'll do? Judith hesitated. I think he's going to claim you used insider information illegally, that you manipulated him into signing those share sale agreements. He's going to try to get the courts to reverse the transactions and restore his majority control. But he has no proof of that because it didn't happen. Proof doesn't always matter if you can create enough doubt, and Bradley knows people. He has connections in the business community. He can make things very difficult for you if he wants to. My phone buzzed. A text from Lawrence. News vans at your house. Reporters everywhere. Don't go home yet. I showed Judith the message. She winced. It's already starting. He's controlling the narrative, making himself look like the victim. Let him try. I have documentation of everything. Every share purchase, every signed agreement, the embezzlement evidence, the witness accounts of his affair announcement. Documentation matters in court. But in the court of public opinion? Judith shook her head. That's a different game entirely. And Bradley's always been good at playing games. I thought about the reporter this morning, the camera in the parking lot, Bradley's theatrical outrage. He'd known exactly what he was doing, creating a scene that would make him look like the wronged party. What would you do? I asked Judith, if you were in my position. She considered this carefully. I'd get ahead of the story. Don't let Bradley control the narrative. You have evidence of embezzlement. Release it. You have witnesses to his affair and his public humiliation of you. Get statements. Show people exactly who he is before he can spin a version of events that makes you look like the villain. That feels vindictive. It's self-defense. Melissa, you outmaneuvered him legally and ethically. You used his own carelessness and arrogance against him. But if you let him rewrite what happened, you'll lose everything you worked for. She finished her coffee. I'm voting with you. So are Thomas and Bernard. But you need to be ready for war, because that's what this is going to become. After Judith left, I sat alone in the cafe for a long time. The lunch crowd filtered in, people laughing and talking, normal Monday afternoon energy. None of them knew that my entire life had transformed in the past 72 hours. I pulled out my phone and called Lawrence. We need to prepare a press statement, a detailed one, with evidence, and I want to file formal embezzlement charges against Bradley. No more waiting. Are you sure? That's going to escalate things significantly. He was planning to strip me of everything I invested, Lawrence. He was plotting this for months while sleeping with his secretary and stealing company money. I'm done being nice. Okay. I'll start drafting everything immediately. This is going to get ugly. It already is ugly. Now we're just making sure everyone knows who made it that way. The press statement went out Tuesday morning. Lawrence and I had worked until midnight drafting it, and it was thorough. Documentary evidence of Bradley's embezzlement, sworn statements from Patricia and 3 other employees about the affair, a detailed timeline of every share purchase, complete with Bradley's signatures on the sales agreements, and my own statement, measured and factual, explaining exactly what had happened. The response was immediate and overwhelming. By noon, every major news outlet in Nashville was running the story. By evening, it had gone national. Business magazines picked it up. Social media exploded with opinions. The video from the Christmas party, which someone had indeed recorded and posted, went viral, showing Bradley's casual cruelty in crystal clear detail. Public opinion shifted dramatically. The comment sections filled with support for me and condemnation of Bradley. People shared their own stories of workplace affairs, of being humiliated by partners, of fighting back against those who'd underestimated them. I became, somehow, a symbol of something larger than my own revenge. Bradley, meanwhile, was hemorrhaging credibility by the hour. He did 3 interviews Tuesday afternoon, each one worse than the last. In the first, he tried to claim I'd manipulated him. In the second, he broke down crying, claiming he still loved me. In the third, he got angry and called me vindictive, which only made him look more guilty. Vanessa stayed silent, which was smart. She'd already lost her job and her reputation. Speaking out would only make things worse. Wednesday morning, I got a call from Thomas. Have you seen Bradley's lawyer's statement? No. What did they say? They're requesting an emergency hearing to freeze all share transactions pending investigation of fraud. They're claiming you used undue influence to manipulate Bradley into signing away his company. I'd been expecting something like this, but it still sent a spike of anxiety through me. Can they prove that? They don't have to prove it for the judge to grant a temporary freeze. All they need is enough doubt to justify an investigation. Melissa, this could tie everything up for months. I hung up and immediately called Lawrence. We need to get ahead of this. What's our response? We file our own motion showing clear documentation that every transaction was at arm's length. We have third-party validators for each share purchase. We have market rate pricing. We have Bradley's own due diligence reports that he signed off on. Lawrence's voice was steady. They're going to lose this motion, but it might take a few weeks. I don't have a few weeks. The company needs stable leadership. Customers need to know we're not in chaos. Then we need to make some noise of our own. That afternoon, Patricia and I held a joint press conference at the Northrise Apparel offices. We stood together in front of the building, cameras rolling, and presented a united front. Northrise Apparel is under stable, experienced leadership, Patricia said firmly. Our operations continue normally. Our products remain high quality. Our employees are secure in their positions. Recent changes in ownership and management have been handled professionally and legally. I added my own statement. I invested in this company 15 years ago because I believed in its vision. I'm still invested in that vision today. Despite attempts to distract with legal maneuvering and public relations campaigns, the facts remain clear. I am the majority shareholder through legal purchases, and I'm committed to Northrise Apparel's continued success. A reporter raised her hand. What about the fraud allegations? There is no fraud, I said simply. There are only signed agreements, documented transactions, and one man who's angry he didn't read what he was signing. The courts will confirm this. Do you regret the way this played out? I paused, considering. Did I regret it? The public spectacle, the media attention, the way my private pain had become entertainment for millions. I regret that my husband chose to humiliate me publicly instead of ending our marriage with dignity. I regret that he stole from his own company and betrayed employees who trusted him. But do I regret protecting myself and my investment? No, I don't regret that at all. The press conference changed the narrative again. By Thursday, the tone of coverage had shifted from bitter divorce battle to businesswoman protecting her interests against unethical partner. Editorial boards started praising my business acumen. Women's organizations reached out offering support. And critically, Northrise Apparel's stock price, which had initially dropped on news of the turmoil, started climbing back up. Friday morning, exactly 1 week after that Christmas party, Bradley's lawyer called Lawrence with a settlement offer. He'll drop the fraud allegations and accept the share structure as legitimate. In exchange, he wants you to buy out his remaining 32% at double market value and agree to a confidentiality clause about the embezzlement. Absolutely not, I said when Lawrence told me. Market value or nothing, and no confidentiality clause. He stole from his own company. That's a matter of public record now. He's not going to like that. I don't care what he likes. He humiliated me in front of 50 people. He plotted to steal my investment. He embezzled $200,000. He doesn't get to walk away with a profit and his reputation intact. Lawrence was quiet for a moment. You know what? You're absolutely right. I'll tell them no deal. Saturday brought the emergency court hearing on Bradley's motion to freeze the share transactions. Lawrence and I sat at one table. Bradley and his attorney sat at another. Vanessa was conspicuously absent. The judge was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s named Judge Catherine Morrison, who'd clearly read all the documentation before we arrived. Mr. Bradley's attorney, she said, you're alleging fraud in these share transactions. Can you present evidence of coercion, misrepresentation, or illegality? Bradley's attorney stood. Your Honor, my client sold shares over an 8-month period without realizing they were all going to the same buyer. This represents a pattern of deception. The buyers were various shell companies and trusts, the judge interrupted. That's not illegal. Many investors prefer to remain anonymous. Did your client conduct any due diligence on these sales? Well, yes, but... And did he have legal counsel review the agreements? He did, however. And were the prices fair market value? The attorney hesitated. They were within market range, but the overall pattern suggests that someone was smart enough to acquire shares strategically while your client wasn't paying attention. Judge Morrison looked at Bradley directly. Sir, are you claiming you were mentally incompetent when you signed these agreements? Bradley stood. No, Your Honor, but I didn't realize that's not a legal basis for fraud. Failing to understand the consequences of contracts you willingly signed is not the same as being defrauded. She turned to Lawrence. Defense counsel, do you have documentation showing these transactions were conducted properly? Every single one, Your Honor. Lawrence presented a thick folder. Market value pricing, third-party validation, legal review, my client's signatures on every agreement. Judge Morrison reviewed the documents for several minutes. Then she closed the folder and looked at Bradley again. Motion denied. The share transactions stand as legitimate. Furthermore, I'm ordering you to cease making public statements alleging fraud unless you can present actual evidence. Do you understand? Bradley's face went red. Your Honor, my wife, your soon-to-be ex-wife, legally acquired shares in a company you were carelessly selling off. That's not fraud. That's business. She banged her gavel. We're done here. Walking out of that courthouse felt like stepping into sunlight after months of darkness. Bradley and his attorney left through a side entrance, avoiding the reporters gathered on the front steps. Lawrence and I walked straight through the main doors. How do you feel? Lawrence asked. Vindicated, I said simply. We gave a brief statement to the press, just confirming that the judge had ruled in our favor and that Northrise Apparel's ownership structure was now definitively established. Then I went home. Not the hotel where I'd been staying. Not the house I'd shared with Bradley. My new home. A condo I'd closed on that morning, purchased with my own money, in a building with good security and a view of downtown Nashville. I walked through the empty rooms, boxes stacked in corners waiting to be unpacked, and felt something close to peace. This was mine. Built by me, paid for by me, chosen by me. No shared history, no compromises, just clean slate and fresh start. My phone rang. Patricia, have you seen the quarterly numbers? Not yet. Why? We're up 17% from last quarter. Sales are strong, orders are coming in, and 3 major retailers just reached out about carrying our products. Melissa, the publicity from all this drama has actually been good for business. I laughed, surprising myself. So, we're the company that fired the cheating CEO and put his ex-wife in charge. That's our brand now? Apparently people like it, and I have to say, employee morale has never been higher. Turns out nobody actually liked Bradley that much. We talked through business details for another 20 minutes. Patricia had good instincts and wasn't afraid to make decisions. She'd make an excellent permanent CEO once we made it official. After we hung up, I opened a bottle of wine I'd brought from the hotel and poured myself a glass. Then I sat on the floor of my empty living room and called Jennifer. Tell me you're celebrating, she demanded immediately. I'm sitting on the floor drinking wine and looking at unpacked boxes. Does that count? It absolutely counts. You won, Melissa. Completely. Bradley has nothing. No company, no credibility, no wife, no future in Nashville business circles. You destroyed him. Had I? I thought about Bradley's face in that courtroom, the way he'd shrunk under Judge Morrison's words. The man who'd stood so confident at that Christmas party, arm around his secretary, treating me like I was nothing. I didn't destroy him, I said slowly. He destroyed himself. I just made sure everyone saw it clearly. Tomato, tomato. The point is, you came out on top. Do you think I'm vindictive? The question surprised me. For taking it this far? Jennifer was quiet for a moment. I think you protected yourself from someone who was actively trying to hurt you. That's not vindictive. That's survival. He was planning to force me out, strip my shares, give everything to Vanessa. Then you didn't go far enough. You should have pressed criminal charges for the embezzlement. I still might. The evidence is filed with the court now. It's public record. Good. Let the district attorney decide if they want to pursue it. You've done your part. We talked for another hour about everything and nothing. Her kids, her job, plans for the holidays. Normal sister conversation. It felt good to talk about something besides revenge and betrayal and corporate takeovers. After we hung up, I finally unpacked some boxes. Kitchen supplies, mostly. Dishes I'd bought new because I didn't want anything from the house I'd shared with Bradley. As I arranged plates and cabinets, my phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. I hope you're happy. You've ruined my life. It had to be Bradley. Or possibly Vanessa. I deleted it without responding. Another text. Almost immediately. Everything I built. Everything I worked for. Gone because you couldn't handle me moving on. I stared at the message, anger rising. Couldn't handle him moving on? He'd stolen from his own company. He'd humiliated me publicly. He'd plotted to strip my investment. I started typing a response, then stopped. Deleted it. Started again. Finally, I sent. You ruined your own life. I just made sure the consequences caught up with you. Then I blocked the number. Monday morning, I went to the Northrise Apparel offices as majority shareholder and board chair. Patricia had done an excellent job over the past week, but there were decisions only I could make. Contracts to review, strategic plans to approve, a future to build. As I walked through the building, employees nodded respectfully. No more awkward pity in their eyes. Just acknowledgement of who I was, the woman who'd built this company alongside Bradley, then saved it from his self-destruction. In the conference room where I'd confronted Bradley just a week ago, the board gathered for our first official meeting under new leadership. Patricia sat at the head of the table now. I took a seat to her right. First item, Patricia said. We need to discuss hiring a permanent CFO to replace the functions Bradley was handling. I have some candidates in mind, Thomas said. The meeting continued, productive and focused. No drama, no betrayals, just business. Afterward, Patricia walked me to my car. You know what's funny? The company runs better without Bradley. He was always more interested in looking like a CEO than actually being one. He wanted the prestige without the work, I agreed. Well, he's definitely not getting any prestige now. She grinned. I saw the news this morning. No one in Nashville will hire him. He's basically blacklisted. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt nothing. Bradley was already becoming a footnote in my story, not the central character he'd once been. How does it feel? Patricia asked. Getting your revenge? I thought about that question as I unlocked my car. How did it feel? Honestly, it feels like closure, like I can finally move forward without looking back. That's probably the best revenge of all, Patricia said, living well. The 6 months passed. Northrise Apparel thrived under Patricia's leadership, posting the best quarterly earnings in company history. I remained involved as board chair, but focused most of my energy on my own investment portfolio and exploring new business opportunities. Bradley and Vanessa left Nashville together, trying to start fresh in Atlanta. Last I heard, he was working as a consultant for a small marketing firm. His dreams of building a fashion empire completely shattered. Vanessa had taken a job as an administrative assistant, her aspirations of being a CEO's partner reduced to answering phones for someone else. The lawsuit for embezzlement that the district attorney eventually filed ensured Bradley would be paying restitution for years, his financial stability destroyed by his own greed and carelessness. They'd moved into a small apartment together. The relationship that had seemed so thrilling and worth destroying a marriage for now reduced to resentment and regret as they faced the consequences of their choices together. Gerald and the 2 board members who'd supported Bradley's plan to force me out quietly resigned after I made it clear their loyalty had been noted. Thomas and Bernard both increased their investments in the company, impressed by Patricia's leadership and my strategic vision. Judith became my mentor in many ways, teaching me how to navigate the textile industry and expand into new markets. The divorce was finalized in April. No contest, no drama. Bradley signed the papers without even trying to negotiate, probably because his attorney had made clear he had no leverage left. I kept the condo, my investment portfolio, and my dignity. He kept his 32% of Northrise apparel, which I eventually bought from him at market value, not the inflated price he'd demanded, providing him with enough money to start over, but not enough to feel victorious. As I stood in my condo one evening, looking out at the Nashville skyline lit up against the night sky, I thought about that Christmas party 6 months ago, the humiliation, the laughter. Bradley's arm around Vanessa as he announced I was just there for appearances. He'd meant to destroy me that night, to make me feel small and worthless and disposable. Instead, he'd given me permission to stop holding back, to stop being the supportive wife who made herself smaller so he could feel bigger, to stop protecting someone who'd never protected me. I raised my wine glass in a silent toast to the woman I'd been at that party, devastated but not defeated, humiliated but already planning her comeback, and to the woman I'd become, stronger, wiser, and finally free to build the life I deserved.